Uh, for those of you who may not be familiar, the National Powersports Dealer Association supports franchise and independent dealers through education, advocacy programs, and practical resources focused on building a stronger and more profitable industry. The NPDA Partner Webinar series gives dealers direct access to the companies, tools, and people helping shape powersports retail with ideas they can take back and put to work. Today's webinar focuses on profit leaks across sales, parts, and service. Most profit leaks are hidden inside everyday process: a lead that was not followed up, a part that should have been reordered, an inefficient service schedule, or a customer who is not kept informed. Individually, these issues may seem small. Across hundreds of transactions, they become expensive. We will look at improving sales follow-up and accountability, managing parts inventory based on actual demand, and understanding service capacity, productivity, work in process, and customer communication. These departments cannot operate as separate islands. A missed sales opportunity affects parts, service, F&I, and future retention. A delayed part affects technician productivity and the customer experience. Poor communication can cost the dealership both the current repair and the next vehicle sale. Today's conversation is about using the systems and information dealers already have to create stronger processes. I can't say that word, better accountability and improved profitability. Joining us today is Brian Tierney from Lightspeed. Brian brings more than 3 decades of powersports experience, beginning inside the dealership and behind the parts counter. That background gives him a practical understanding of both dealership operations and the technology available to improve them. Today, Brian will share practical ways dealers can strengthen sales execution, improve parts performance, better understand service capacity, and get more value from the tools they already use. Please submit your questions using the Q&A button that you'll find down in the taskbar at the bottom of your screen. I will work towards getting those into the presentation, or we'll have some time at the end of this presentation to work our way through those. The webinar is also being recorded, and within 2 or 3 days after this is done, we'll have this available on the NPDA YouTube channel. With that, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Brian.
Well, thank you, Mark. Thanks for that great introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. It's really great to be a part of any webinar that you're hosting, and certainly a great opportunity for me to be a part of the National Powersports Dealer Association. So thanks for that. And thank you for joining us, folks. I know you've got a busy schedule at your dealership today, and you got a lot going on. We certainly appreciate the attention that you're giving us in today's webinar. So to kind of get underway, Mark had pointed out a few things we're going to talk about in today's webinar. The agenda is basically, as Mark established already, we're going to talk about operational debts. What happens when we're looking at parts, service, and sales when it comes to inventory management, lost opportunities, whether it's a lead, whether it's a part that we should have had, whether it's a communication that should go out to the service customer throughout that service cycle. We're going to talk about all those ways that we can mitigate those challenges and maximize our efficiency across those different elements of the business. Now, clearly, we're going to be talking about Lightspeed, and I do empathize and understand there may be some folks that are using other solutions. So in that, guys, as we go through the demonstration of Lightspeed and speak about the capability of that solution, we'll also be mindful that folks may be using something else and talk about ways that just in general practice that you can apply what we're going to speak about today to whatever tool or products you're using. We're also going to talk about some analytical tools. At the end of the day, if you're applying some of the things that you're going to learn from us today and some of the things that maybe you already know, how can we measure whether they're working or not? We're going to look at some analytical tools that'll give you some indications that the things that you're doing and that you've applied and that you've learned are actually making a difference. Then we're going to look at one of my favorite reports in the system, the customer retention report, and it'll give us an idea, again, some analytics. And in my mind, I like to think of it as my report card. It's a very, very simple report card that lets me know, am I failing? Do I have a C grade? Or am I an A student? We'll give you an idea of what to look for with that and why it matters. And then we'll take some of that data that we'll glean from that retention report and some of the other reports that we have in the system. We're going to actually take action on it. It's great to be able to see it. It's great to be able to measure things. But if you can't do anything with those measurements, why have them? So we're going to actually take action on the data. So we'll talk about all those things together. So with that, let's start in the parts department. And as we go through the parts module in Lightspeed, we're going to speak about some things that you can use in your Lightspeed solution to manage inventory. Make sure you have turned on so that the data that's flowing into your system is relevant to your experience. And I'll also give you a reference to expand on some of this thought, some of these ideas that we're going to speak about here, because Mark and I have done some webinars in the past on some of the key components to this parts piece where we talked at length for multiple hours. And I'll give you a reference on where you can go to see that additional information. So with that, let's dive in. We're going to go into Lightspeed here. And we're going to start by just going into the ordering screen. And I want to speak about a couple of things. So we're going to go to parts and ordering. And tongue in cheek, whenever I'm speaking about the ordering screen, I'll often refer to this as my wish list. And a lot of times that connection, that terminology makes sense to folks that are sharing the screen with me and sharing the narrative we're about to speak to. So as I'm looking at this list, I see a series of part numbers, descriptions. I also see special order customers that are attached to some of these parts, and also see source codes and cost values on the far right side of my screen. Now, mind you, if you are using Lightspeed and maybe you're following along with me, a couple of things that I'll point out before we get too far into our demonstration today is I like to curate my sample environment, my database. And so some of you may know this, some of you may not. If you want to add or remove or move columns around on any one of these screens, if you right click on this dark blue banner at the top of any of the list screens, inventory, deal screens, or in this case, my ordering screen, it's going to open up your column options menu where you can pick and choose what columns do I want to see presented, and then where would I actually like those columns to sit. Now, of course, once I make those determinations, it saves to my profile. So when I log out of the business tonight and I log in back tomorrow, whatever I left that screen to look like for the previous day is what I'm presented with the following. And a lot of times when I'm showcasing that to a dealer as I'm a trainer on site or working with them in a support scenario, it's not unusual to have a dealer or a user in a store to have a screen that looks different than their partner. And that's completely fine. Lightspeed allows you the ability to have a custom and unique experience in the software, and those are just some of the ways we do it. So now back to the story, a couple things to consider. One is you'll want to make sure that you have your price books lining up with your system. And I'm going to show you a little cheat that I use to make sure that my price books are, first of all, in the system. And second of all, it's also going to give me an indication maybe when it last updated. So this is a little one of those things that I would say, put this in your back pocket and keep it in mind. So if I ever have a question, am I getting the latest price book feeds from my third-party companies or my OEMs? I'll go to parts, list, price books, and I'm going to type in the part number field, PB, which is price books, then dash. Every price book that's hitting your system actually has a part number for the price book that feeds the system. And behind the dash, so PB means price books, dash is then the supplier code. And if we look at, let's say, Honda, HO, for example, I can see the last time that price book updated. And I also know that that price book is in my system. But if I think that I should have Honda price books and I type PB dash and there's no HO, well, we know we have a problem. We're missing the price books. And if there's a date that's old, well, it hasn't been updated since back in whatever date that represents there. So keep that in mind. So first, make sure the price book data is flowing into your system. Second, I'm going to speak about escalation control and allowing you to control what is your pricing. Do you want your price to be retail? Do you want your price to be up or below retail? All of those things are things that dealerships consider. Now, we won't go too much into escalators today. I know we talked about it in our previous webinars. I'll give you a way to find that information a little bit later. But I'm in parts, lists, and I'm now in suppliers, and I picked a particular supplier. We're picking on Honda today. I want to make sure that I enable my escalators, and I also want to make sure that I might turn on my auto escalation. So when those price books hit my system, my retail prices, my cost values, my details that are in inventory reflect those changes. Now, dealerships will sometimes choose not to do that. And Mark, have you had any experience as to why you might not want to enable escalators? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, without digging too much into whether you're using weighted average or last cost, I think one of the issues that we've got today is that we've got quite a few manufacturers that offer, bonus programs where, you can order $5,000 in oil and you're getting 10% off of that. And if you receive that into your system at a discount and you don't have the part set up correctly, or you're not using weighted average, and you run these escalators automatically, it'll actually wipe out those discounts that you've got. And even with the case of oil, in some cases, the price book from the manufacturer might have oil in at a case quantity, and yet you sell it as quarts out of your system. And so the system can actually take that oil that you've got at $12 is what you paid, and escalate it up to the $160 for the case quantity. And, now all of a sudden, things are out of whack in your system. So it's not just a button you want to click without really understanding what all the ramifications can be.
Absolutely. Yeah, perfect input. If you buy something at a discount price, you certainly don't want the price book update that occurred last night to impact that sale price. helmets that we get on sale, clothing that we get on sale. We don't want to impact those. So definitely things to consider as you're exploring this. Now, what's also present on this screen is that last price book update. Now, we saw that on the price book screen a moment ago. It's also going to coincide with your supplier list. So this is another great place to go and reference to make sure that your price books are updating appropriately. Now that once that's in place, now you know your pricing's accurate. You know you got the latest and greatest from the vendors and providers you get your information from. But let's talk about a couple of other things. And really where I'm going with this is making sure you have the right part in stock at the right time. Now, as I go into parts, I'm going to go down to reports, and I just want to show one report, one of my favorite. If I was to say, what are your top 5 favorite reports in the system, and I was to pick one from parts, I like this top selling parts report. Now, mind you, I am looking at sample data. I think this is Jeff Emig Supercenter, if I'm not mistaken, right, Mark? Uh,
Yeah, you've that restraining order. When does that expire?
yeah, I think it expires next month, so pretend I didn't say that. Anyway, so what I'm doing is I'm going to run a report that is going to glean information over the course of a year. Now, the reason I'm doing a year worth of data is I'm not in a live store, so I'm not selling as many parts as an actual live store would sell. So I'm going to just go a little bit longer period of time. Many dealerships are going to look at this from a seasonal standpoint, or maybe a month, maybe a week worth of data. But in this case, I want to see the top 25 selling parts for the business. And I'm just going to keep it really simple, and I generate the report. And I'll get to why this matters in a moment, but what this is interesting information that lets me know what's my top selling part, how frequently am I selling it? Well, this fan belt's a popular unit. That one sold almost 600 times in the last year, and we're making pretty decent money on it. And then it kind of goes down the list to show me what my next and third and fourth and fifth best selling items are. Now, if I know that these are selling because my report's telling me so, next thing is I want to make sure that I'm stocking these things. If we're selling a lot of them, we need to make sure that we keep them in stock and that we keep them in stock in volumes that make sense for our customers and for our service department and other places in the business. Now, how do we do that? Well, we're going to go apply some things that we learned in a previous webinar that Mark and I did. We're going to go back to my wish list. This is the ordering screen. And first of all, we've got the part numbers. We do have special order items on here by default. And if I'm walking around the shop and I notice that bin for fan belts is getting a little lean, well, I can certainly add those to the list, but this is kind of an emotional reaction. By me adding that part to the list, this is me just recognizing the information, and I might say, well, you know what, I probably should have 25 of those. Do I know that that number's right? Probably not, but my emotions tell me it is. I looked at that report a minute ago, and it told me I sold 600 of those things. Is 25 the right amount that I should be stocking today? Maybe not. Maybe that's too high. In which case, if it's too high, I'm probably spending too much money on inventory. And if I make that decision about one part, what's to say I didn't make that decision about 10 parts? And now I'm way overextended on my inventory value. So let's kick this off for just a moment. I'm going to remove that part that I just added here very emotionally. I think I was even crying when I added it. But for now, instead of emotionally adding parts to this list, I'm going to press the guide button, which is short for buying guide, because we're going to buy some parts together. And as I bring up this graphic image, some of you that have used this before may know what you're looking at. This is your annual budget for parts. It shows every month of the year and the dollars that I spend to stock my shelves. And in many cases, dealerships are seasonal, hence the curve. We spend a little more money in the summertime than we do in the wintertime to stock the shelves. Here in Utah, hopefully it's snowing. Didn't snow much last winter, but hopefully it's snowing, so we don't spend as much to stock our shelves in the winter than we do in the summer. Now, where did this information come from? This is coming from essentially your accounting department who's tracking what you sell every year by month. And just for context, I'm going to show you where this lives in the system. Lives in your system menu, lives in order defaults. Now, your bookkeeper, your accountant, your controller is going to be in charge of entering these values throughout the year, which is building something called a ordering sales curve, which determines this is the volume that you sell for each month of the year. This kind of builds a little bit of seasonality and a little bit of a budget and expectation for what you should be spending to stock your shelves. Okay, so once we've established that, we're going to go back to the buying guide. I'm going to press the button. I can also set in time, how long do I want to order for? Maybe I want to order for the next 30 days, in which case 1.0, that's a range of 1 month, which is starting today and over the next 30 days. Make sure you have the right number of parts on your shelf to sell based on that sales curve that we just talked about, which is looking at budget. It's looking at how many times do you sell that part over the course of 12 months. It's looking to see, do you already have that part on order? In which case, when it gets here, can you sell it? So it's looking at a number of different aggregate pieces of information. I can pick and choose what supplier do I want to order from, my third parties or OEMs. Do I want to order just my helmets today or my boots, my t-shirts or my chemicals? And then I run the guide. Now, for me, when I was working behind a parts counter in a motorcycle store, I would run this report at about 2:30 in the afternoon. Why? Well, if I need to get my next day stuff placed before it's too late so that I can get my next day stuff tomorrow, I need to place my orders by 3 o'clock. So I run this report at 2:30. It serves all the information up to me to let me know what parts I should order. Now, mind you, there are some other order types, reorder types that are available for parts. We're focusing on sales curve now. If you're interested in learning more about sales curve, learning more about min-max, learning more about force to ones and force to zeros, what I would encourage you to do, and I'm going to pause for just a second and I'm going to pitch a little bit here to you. Go to YouTube and look up a channel for the accounting guys. And on the accounting guys, you're going to see these three handsome fellows wearing sombreros, the three amigos who have done some webinars that go into more detail about exactly what I'm talking about. And the one in particular is this Stock Smarter, Sell More video. Watch that, and it's going to give you everything you ever wanted to know about what we're talking about now. More detail, more information. But back to our story. So it's 2:30. I'm trying to fill out my order screen because I need to place my orders before 3 o'clock. I click update and dump everything that Lightspeed recommends that I order because it's tracking what I'm selling. It's tracking what I'm low on. It's tracking what I already have on order, and it lets me focus on the customer and the customer experience and making sure that I'm taking care of them, and Lightspeed will take care of your inventory for you. So it dumps all those parts into my screen, and now I can go ahead and place those orders. And this goes a number of different ways depending on your provider you're working with, whether it has a direct API feed from Lightspeed to the vendor, or we're sending it off via email, or we're going to do a download of the file and import into the vendor screen. I won't go into too much detail about that, but I would encourage you to explore reorder points. And with that in mind, let's take a quick look at where those reorder points live, and then I'm going to move on to the next subject because we've got a lot to talk about today. But do check out the YouTube channel for the accounting guys. Look for those three amigos and review some of this data if you're curious about learning more. Now, if I go into a specific part record, at the very bottom of the screen is where my reorder methods live: sales curve, force to one, force to zero, and min max. So I do have the ability to select by part, how do I want those parts to be impacted by my buying guide. Once I've set that, then I run the guide and the rest takes over from there. So hopefully that helps. Definitely look at that if you're not looking at it now. Make sure your price books are updating. Make sure that you got your escalator on if it's pertinent to your business. And let's talk about service for a moment. But before I do, Mark, is there any questions that we should take a look at while we're switching
Not
gears?
yet. In the comments though, I just dropped a link to a shared Google Sheet that we've used in some other webinars, and it's actually got a chart on there that you can utilize to build that seasonal trend. So you can just take 3 years of data, drop that in, and then it'll give you the numbers to go into that page that Brian showed you.
Perfect. Thanks for doing that. So let's talk service. And when it comes to automation, some of the tools that live in your service department now that you may have, and maybe some things to consider as you're looking at ways to better communicate to your customers. One of the things that I often tongue-in-cheek say when I'm talking to a customer about the service experience, and usually get a chuckle, and the chuckle comes from agreement, I think, is we're in an age where folks generally are not answering their phones anymore. And I'm as guilty as anybody. If I get a phone call and I don't recognize the phone number, there's no way I'm answering it. I'm just too busy. But if I get a text message, chances are I'm going to answer that text. In fact, the data would suggest that 48% of the time, when a person in the United States or North America gets a text, they respond 48% of the time. So if you're reaching out to customers, text messaging is a great way to do that. It's a little more effective than calling. Of course, you can leave a voicemail, but how can we get our voice in front of a customer? We're going to talk about service video for a moment and also show you some of the places in the service module or service department that OEMs are feeding information that may benefit you from a revenue standpoint, or just maybe provide a better, more streamlined, more concierge, white glove experience for the customer. OEM bulletins, we'll talk about that. And then one of the things before I get into Lightspeed again and speak to where these tools live, some of the things that I'm hearing, and I'm also one of those that says these things, is I dropped my vehicle off for service 30 days ago and I have not heard from the dealership. Nobody's called me. I don't know what's going on with it. And I may call the dealer and they may tell me, we're still waiting for parts, or the warranty hasn't been approved, or this excuse. And by the time I've already called the customer, or called the dealer rather, I'm upset, right? And as the time continues to go, I get more and more upset. So even if we send out bad news, even if it's that the parts aren't here yet, the warranty hasn't been approved, do be proactive and communicate to your customers. It's going to keep tempers down. Even if it's bad news, it's going to keep people happy and it's going to keep them loyal. We're going to show you some ways to do that. So let's talk about it. We're going to go to service this time, and I'm going to open up estimates and repair orders. And we're going to walk right into a couple of components that live inside of the service experience. And as I'm looking at this screen, hopefully folks are familiar with this. If you're not, this I think of as my work in progress screen. It's an illustration of everything going on live on the service floor right now. And it gives me status updates like I'm waiting for parts or ready to work or ready to cashier and deliver to the customer. I've also got some categories that I can use to help facilitate updates to me and therefore to my customers called RO categories. And we use these to kind of define, is the customer waiting? Are we waiting for parts? Did the warranty get declined? Or maybe this is an off-site repair, so that at a glance I can tell pretty clearly what's going on across the service department just by those simple definitions. We're going to pick on Jeff Emig, who is the owner of Jeff Emig Superstore, and he's dropped off a Harley Sportster for some work. Now, a couple things. This is going to be dependent on the OEM, so I'm going to offer some thoughts. Some of our OEMs are better partners in this regard than others. And I don't mean better in a disparaging way. They're just a little more communicative. And here's how this works. If I go to the Units tab and I'm adding a unit that might have a recall, some sort of service communication or a bulletin that's posted by the OEM that we receive into Lightspeed, when you're adding a VIN number and you save that VIN number or add a vehicle that has a prior entered VIN number into a repair order, if there's one of those communications from the vendor, your bulletins button starts flashing and it says, hey, look at me. So I press that button and it gives me the recall. It gives me the stop sale. It gives me the warranty, which might be a revenue generator for me as a service department, but it gives me that direct communication from the OEM so that I can take action and be more effective with my customer and also with the business. Now, sometimes folks will say, well, how often does that update? Is it once a year? Is it once a month? No, it's once a night. So those are updated daily. So you always have the latest and greatest information from the providers we get that from. If you're curious if your OEM is providing that information and you're not seeing it now, reach out to your service or to your Lightspeed account rep, and they'll make sure that that's flowing for you. So with that, a couple of other things. We're going to go over to the Work tab for a moment, and I'm going to grab one of the jobs and just speak about some of the ways that we communicate. Going back to folks aren't answering their phones anymore. How do we get our voice in their ear? How do we be more proactive about updating customers through the service cycle? So I'm going to take this job, install rear brake pads, and I'm going to go right to the attachments tab, and I'm going to leave this open for a moment and talk about the mobile app. Now I'm playing the role of the technician in this experience. So I'm the service tech, I'm the guy turning wrenches. And I have access to the Lightspeed mobile app, which incidentally, if you're not familiar with it, it's a free application that plugs right into your Lightspeed experience. It uses the same permissions the desktop uses, so it really relegates what I can do with the mobile app based on what I can do with the desktop. So keep that in mind, it is permission-based. Now, as a technician, if I'm using this to manage my day-to-day activity inside of Lightspeed, it can be put onto my own personal phone, or I might use just a simple $50 tablet from Amazon to put the app on. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. But if I'm accessing the tech experience in the mobile app, I press my tech button, and first of all, I can see my schedule and manage my day-to-day activity and my actual hours here. But also back to our story, we're doing some installation of brake pads, and as we were installing those brake pads, we noticed a problem. Well, I may take a picture of that problem, and that picture is going to land as an attachment back on the desktop side of Lightspeed. And Mark always tells me that a picture's worth 1,000 words. Sometimes when it comes to service, a picture could be worth $1,000. I might send a text message out to Jeff and say, hey, your brake pads are worn out. We should replace them. And he's like, dude, I got a race this weekend. I don't have time for your brake pads. Just put it back together, duct tape it, do whatever you got to do. But if I send him a picture of those worn out pads, Jeff's probably more inclined to take me up on that offer. Or it could be a status update. It could be as simple as that. But if we take it one step further, if a photo's worth $1,000, what's a video worth? So maybe I do a video recording of me walking around the bike, showing what's right, what's wrong, because I do want to be complimentary, but I also want to take an opportunity to show the customer some ways that they can be better, right? Jeff wants to win this weekend, so he's got to make sure his bike's tip-top. So I record that video. It lands as an attachment back on the desktop side of Lightspeed, where my advisor, my manager, is going to review that video to make sure that whatever I'm sending Jeff is probably not obscene. Anyway, so that's a whole nother story, but nonetheless, we send this video out via text message because Jeff's going to respond to the text, and embedded in that text message is some blue hyperlink messaging. And when Jeff clicks on that little blue hyperlink messaging, he's going to see a little play button in the center of the screen and a video that looks like this.
Brian with Lightspeed Powersports, the technician that's performing your visual inspection of your motorcycle. I'm also the gentleman that's working on your bike. Went through and did a little bit of visual inspection of the brake pads. We did check chain and sprockets. Chain and sprockets look great, by the way. Now your brake pads on the back look fine. Now let's talk about brake pads on the front. We did a visual inspection of brake pads on the front. Front's a little worn, and both sides, both calipers probably need a little bit of a replacement of brake pads. Went ahead and priced those for you. You're looking at $89.95 per caliper. Now we're going to install those at about $120 for the labor. There's going to be some shop supply, so roughly that for the replacement of the brake pads. Now we did look through your electrical component system. You were complaining about some starting issues. Bike was snap crackling and popping when it was running. We found a little bit of water in the fuse box that was contributing to that problem. Went ahead and cleaned out the fuse box, dried everything out. Bike's running great. Now one other thing we did notice when we pulled the fairings is you've got a little bit of a scrape on the exhaust shield. Went ahead and priced one of those for you. You're looking at about $185 for the OEM replacement, and if you'd like a carbon fiber accessory replacement, you're looking $285. That's a great opportunity to replace it now while we've got things torn down. But as always, if you have any questions or need some help, let me know. Brian with Lightspeed Powersports.
So that little example of B-moving Hollywood acting there is what we call service video. And service video is a component of the service experience that is now moving into sales, by the way. So we're going to add a service video component here imminently, probably before we go home today. Don't tell anybody I said that. But anyway, so what we found as we've been watching analytics, what is the adoption rate for dealers that are now using service video in their business? Well, we're seeing a significant adoption rate. In fact, we know in the automotive industry, they live and die by this. But what we're also seeing is on the low end, and we can corroborate this.
Corroborate.
Is that a word? Okay. We can verify this. The dealerships are seeing an increase of 15% in revenue once they've started adopting video. And I've got a dealership where this was recorded, mind you. It's 5 miles from where I live. They're reporting a 100% increase in revenue by using video. Now, that's a bold statement, right? So where are they seeing it? Well, they are seeing customers, consumers saying, yeah, go ahead and give me those brake pads, or go ahead and do that extra service in the same repair order that the video is sent from. But they're also seeing loyalty being built. Once they hear the technician's voice, maybe see their face, see their motorcycle, they trust that experience, they're more inclined to come back for a second, third, or fourth service and repair. So whether it's the repair order the video was sent from or subsequent repair orders, we're seeing an increase in revenue as a result of video. And then going back to getting our voice in front of the customer, since they're not answering the phone, this is a way I can get my voice out to them above and beyond text messaging. So powerful stuff. Now, one other thing I'll say, and we'll get into the sales side of the business, is on the communications tab inside this repair order is every time we send out a request for information from the customer, a service update, a video, a photo, all of that is captured and saved on the communications tab within the repair order. So as I'm looking at this screen, I see a bunch of green boxes, a bunch of blue boxes. The green box is the outbound message to the customer with an update, with a video, with a request for signature or deposit. All of those things are true. The blue box is the response back from the customer, and it's saved in the repair order, saved as part of the service history, it's saved as part of the customer history, and can be referred back to later. So very powerful information about what's going on with that service experience, and it can also be used and leveraged to generate loyalty, which we'll see about that a little bit later. Now, if we want to take some of that work off of our plate, the pushing of the button to send out the message, or the updates to the customer, reminders of service, or thank you messages after the repair, or reminders to come in for your next appointment, we can automate those using follow-up chains. Now we're tiptoeing into CRM territory, and CRM typically lives on the sales side of the business, and yes, it still does. But follow-up chains allows you to automate some of that communication with 3 appointment reminders before the service event even happens. 3 days before, the day before, maybe an hour before the customer is supposed to be there, just gentle reminders. Don't forget about your appointment. Keeps those folks coming in on a timely basis. Service updates throughout the cycle. Going back to I dropped my bike off 30 days ago and nobody's called me. Well, if we can automate it so that the system generates an update or a reminder or some sort of communication during that service cycle, well, now I don't have to remember as a person. Let Lightspeed do that. And then as the cadence continues, we can continue to send out emails, text messages, updates to the customer, keep them engaged, keep them coming back, generate loyalty. And that's kind of the idea behind all of that in service. So we're going to take a little bit of what we learned in service and apply that to sales. Before I switch gears to sales, Mark, any questions that we should address while we're talking
Yeah,
service.
I actually wanted to hit you on a few things. These didn't come up from the crowd, but just things that I'm thinking about, and especially based on a webinar or a meeting I had with a dealer early this morning.
Please.
One of the things, as dealers should, uh, access and security and Lightspeed should be somewhat controlled. And if you wanted to jump into system preferences real quick,
Hmm.
and we should have a very small number of people that have access to this, but let's
Yeah.
drop down to service.
Okay.
And it's in click our service messages. I've got to remember where the appointment reminders live in here.
Oh, yeah, yeah. This is going to be, I think in follow-ups might be what you're thinking, maybe.
Yes. Okay. So this is it. So
Yeah.
one of the key things here is that you can work on your follow-up chains within Lightspeed, but the service appointment reminders live here in system preferences. They don't live in the follow-up chains. And so a lot of people, if you don't have access to system preferences, they may not even know that this exists. And you want to just kind of walk through the customization you can do in here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great call out because it is a kind of in an unusual place. And to your point, Mark, I've had folks ask me, I'm looking in follow-up chains and I can't find where I build those appointment reminders. Well, they're not there, and they probably should be because that seems like the logical place. But sometimes maybe the guy that built this or gal had a different logic. And so here we are. We're in system preferences under follow-ups and appointment reminders. So at the very top of the screen, we can determine where do we want those appointment reminders to live? Is it something service, sales, rental, parts related? In this case, it's a service related functionality. Then we enable up to 3 different appointment reminders, and we can set the cadences. We want this to go out in this example 2 weeks via email, which is going to be connected to a template that we've pre-built. That's just a simple, gentle reminder. Mr. or Mrs. Customer, this is just a reminder of your appointment that's in 2 weeks. Wanted to let you know we care about you, we love you, we can't wait to see you. Whatever you want to put on there. The same kind of communication happens again 1 day prior to the event, according to this cadence, and that's flexible and customizable. In this case, the next one that goes out is a text message with a similar template. Texting is generally a smaller message without any kind of colors or additional details. It's real simple, black and white, but we know they're effective. And then maybe an hour before the appointment, another text goes out to the customer. And why? Well, it's frustrating to the dealers, probably in some ways frustrating to the consumer when they schedule an appointment and they don't show up. It makes it difficult for you to schedule your technicians and make sure everything's running efficiently in service when you have a significant number of your appointments that don't show up. So this helps to kind of prevent those no-shows from happening. Great call out. Yeah,
And
appreciate you.
yeah, no problem. Next one I wanted you to drop into real quick, and this was the discussion I had with the dealer this morning. Let's go to system list and communication accounts.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Okay. There we
Now
go.
within Lightspeed, there are actually 3 different types of communication accounts. So you've got your store, which is going to be your overall just basic notifications that go out, could be parts have been received, other things like that. We also have individual, which should be you've got a service writer who has been set up with their own email and their own text number in the system. They can send out, and they're going to personally get those back as well. But there's also these group communication accounts in here. And let's say that you've got a smaller service department, 3 or 4 technicians. You got a couple of service writers who are working. They're not assigned to individual customers. Instead of setting up your service writers with individual communication accounts, you might just want to set one up for the group of service writers that exist over there. And that way, there's a little bit of redundancy that happens there, but you also are minimizing the risk of response going to an individual, that person not being there, being off that day, or just not being around, and nobody else kind of knowing that communication happened. You want to jump into one of those and just kind of show how that's set up?
Absolutely. So if we go into this group account, we're using just a shared email address. And in this case, I also have a text number that's shared among that particular department. And that is, of course, going to be a different email address and potentially a different text phone number for service versus sales. But it allows me to set those up. And then I can also assign who belongs to that group. I can pick those individual members. And anybody who's part of the group membership at the very bottom of the screen is going to get that communication as it comes back from the consumer. And if somebody's not pertinent to that dialogue, or if staff members leave or you get new staff members, you can always adjust this and change this based on the particular requirements for the business.
One of the other ways we use those group accounts is if we have an employee who's got their own communication number and they go on vacation for a week, we'll typically remove that text number from them up in the upper right-hand corner and put it back on a group, the other people who are going to cover for that employee while they're gone. And then when they come back, we just reverse that. It's a little bit of extra work, but it makes sure that, employee's gone for a week, that a customer is not sending in text messages to someone who's guaranteed not to respond.
Yeah, great call out.
And last question I had for you. I
Sure.
know that there's been some discussions about an update to the Lightspeed app. Is that
Yes.
do you know, is that going to be a fresh install of a new app, or is that just going to be an update to the one that we currently have installed?
The initial update, which might happen by 3 o'clock today, it's happening anytime. I keep
It's going to
waiting
be a
for it.
busy. It's going to be a busy day based on everything
It's
you've committed to so far.
yeah, I probably shouldn't be committing, but I keep checking my app to see if it updated. That's how soon it's about to happen. So the initial update really is a bit of a refresh from a cosmetic standpoint. We're kind of going to some different colorways and changing the way the visuals look in the app, and there's some minor performance changes that are coming to the initial change. There are some projects that are underway to maximize some of the performance issues that we've seen in the past. Some of those performance issues are related to photos. We are aware of some of those things and are actively working on trying to change and improve those. And we're looking at adding some additional capabilities to the software. Some of the things I can't really talk about yet because it's top secret, but some really powerful ways to, based on what we're talking about today, which is outreach to customers and making sure you're taking the best care of them as you possibly can. We've got some really powerful ways that we're going to be able to do that from the mobile and from the desktop. It's going to be a marriage made in heaven at that point when it happens. So it's very, very soon. The refresh for the cosmetic piece should be happening anytime. And it just makes it look prettier, and prettier is kind of fun. But the big things are coming soon.
I tend to find that a lot of dealers, one, don't know about the app.
Hmm.
Two, don't know that it doesn't require a user license.
Yeah,
So you can have every one of your employees in that app, and it's not costing you anything else other than whatever you're paying for your internet access. And the last one is that if you have employees that have communication accounts, once you've got the app installed on your phone, if a customer responds to a text message that you sent out of Lightspeed, you can actually get a notification on your phone as well as on Lightspeed screen as well.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I had planned to show that, Mark, and I completely dropped the ball there. So thanks for reminding me. You're right. The back and forth text and email that's occurring in that repair order that we saw a moment ago, the update on the brake pads, the requests for more information, the outreach for the deposit. While that's all in good happening on the desktop, and we love that, it's also happening in the mobile environment. It's a direct mirror image of both. So I like to think of that as my way to get away from the keyboard because I like to sometimes go outside and see the sunshine, see the blue sky, and I can still stay in touch with my customers and provide them a superior experience, even if I'm not touching my keyboard all day. So the mobile app allows me that. Absolutely. Well,
I
perfect.
think I've covered all my open pieces at this point. If you want to keep
I'm
rolling.
I'm going to add one more element, and it will be pertinent to what we talk about here in sales, but it kind of dovetails or adds to some of what you were talking about, Mark, and in terms of the appointment reminders and communication internally. And some of the folks on the call may know about this, some of you may not, but this is an often overlooked function in the program called system alerts. And really, this is primarily designed for alerts within the business, and it does directly integrate with the mobile alerts as well. So for things like we're going to talk about next, maximizing CRM appointments and making sure you're taking care of customers when vehicles show up that one of your customers is looking for. Do you want to be notified as a salesperson, as an F&I person, as a desking agent that occurred? Of course you do. If you've sent out a request for payment, do you want to know that request for payment's gone out and maybe the customer actually paid it? Of course. You have a follow-up coming up, like an appointment to call the customer, send them a text message, deliver paperwork to them, deliver their bike to their house. Do you want to be reminded you have that appointment, or find out 20 minutes after you're supposed to be there that you were supposed to be there? So all of these things you can sign up for. And what I often tell folks is be careful how many you sign up for, because otherwise your phone will not stop texting you and saying, do the thing. But do sign up for the things that are pertinent to your job, because you'll notice some of these are service related, some are parts, some are sales, some are accounting. But sign up for these alerts. And with that in mind, you can sign up to be notified by text, by email, by a pop-up in Lightspeed. And some of these have a little bit of an update to the mobile app as well. So it really kind of depends on the notification. But check those out, see if any of those are pertinent to you. And, I think we've talked about this before in our Three Amigos webinars, Mark. it's always important to communicate in dealerships. And back in my time in the dealership, and I think it's still true today, communication is always a problem, right? The sales guys are not communicating to the service department. The parts department's not communicating to service, and vice versa. So if we can open up some other communication channels in the business, even if we're failing by word of mouth, maybe some of this digital communication will fill the gaps. So consider that as your work in between departments.
Hey, while you're helping dealers to save money, I'll throw in my one annual. This will save everybody at least a couple $100 this year. Every dealer across the country has got some employee working in your dealership that all day long they're processing transactions, and a piece of paper is coming out of the printer, and they're taking it out of there and throwing it in the trash all day long. If you just jump to system and workstation preferences.
Okay, all right.
If you've got that employee who all day long is generating paper that's ending up right in the trash, you can enable this workstation preferences. And let's say that it's parts to service. You can just go down and unclick that use Windows default printer.
There we go. Okay. Yep.
For any one of those.
It's staring at me in the face. Yep.
And then just in the drop down, just put no printer.
There you go.
And what will happen is that every time that transaction happens now, it'll just send that invoice off into space. So
how much are we going to save, Mark?
I think it's at least $250 in paper per dealer per year.
Hey, I'll take $250 worth of Red Bull as an offset. So count me in. All right. Well, cool. I appreciate that. That's great. So based on some of the things we've learned together, communication and alerts and the mobile application and even printer settings, let's apply some of those things to the sales experience. And we're going to focus primarily on pipeline management. So lead integration, what does that even mean? Are we maximizing the leads and the sources that we can get information from? And I'll show you where you can set those up and make sure that you are. We'll look at another tool that's relatively new to the Lightspeed world, one of our insight tools. And I'm going to focus on the manager insight tool. And I want to show you what I like to refer to as my digital deal jacket. You know, a lot of times as a trainer, and even me working with dealerships today, we'll introduce the concept of e-signature, which some of you may know about e-signature. Some of you may be familiar with DocuSign. Some of you may be familiar with both. And you may be finding as you're preparing paperwork, you're doing the F&I process, you're getting signatures from customers while you're selling, is there might be that form or a series of forms that you feel like you need to print because that provider will only take a print copy or a wet signature. And that may be true, but more and more, I think it's probably worth a phone call to that provider to verify that, because I'll tell you a little bit of a story, and I won't name names, but I was at a Harley store in Tennessee a couple of years ago, and we were trying to transition all their F&I and sales forms to digital so that they could get those e-signatures on every single one of them. And the F&I guy was convinced that this lender was not going to take an e-sign doc. So we picked up the phone and called them, and they said, yeah, of course we will. So as soon as we hung up with that vendor, that provider, this F&I guy grabbed his dot matrix printer, walked out into the parking lot, and there's a bonfire in the parking lot. Mind you, he chucked the thing into the fire. His expression didn't change one bit the whole time. We went back and we continued training. So one of my favorite experiences at a dealership. Nonetheless, I came out of that dealership with a bottle of Blanton's, by the way. That's a whole nother story.
I lived in Antioch for a little bit, and there's some backwoods areas of Tennessee. But how far in the sticks were you that they actually had a bonfire going in the parking lot?
I don't know what the premise behind the bonfire was, but I mean, it was pretty cool. It had this really decorative fence around it, wrought iron fence, but it was going all day long. Customers walking past it. And I don't want to name names because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but it was not too far outside of the city. So not too rural.
I know every now and then, I visit 100 dealers a year, and every now and then I walk past an office and I hear that old Okie Data 320 going. And
yeah.
I'm just like, I don't miss those days.
No. I think if everybody could get rid of them, they would. So I would encourage you, if you're concerned, if you're thinking about it, call your provider, see if they'll take a digital signature. And if they will, get yourself a bonfire and get rid of that printer. So let's talk about what that looks like in Lightspeed. So first, I'm just going to open up a couple screens, and then we'll offer some color to the commentary. And as I open up leads, quotes, and deals, lots of colors on this screen. I'll get to why that's important in a moment. And I'm going to tie this into one of our CRM dashboards. We're going to pick on the manager in this demonstration today. But before we get to that manager insight tool, I want to explain where the colors are coming from. And if you're not using colors, show you some ways that you can, why you would care about those. But as I'm looking at this screen, first of all, we're looking at the date the deal began or the conversation began with the customer. We're looking at worksheet number, looking at the customer name, and Jeff Emig is in there a few times. And I can also see the stage name. And I like to think of the stages as the steps that I take to the sale, from greeting the customer, the initial conversation, to identifying the proper fit, to negotiating pricing, to collecting a deposit. Now, some dealerships have 2 steps: greet the customer, sell the unit. Some have 30, and they're very intricate in the way the management team wants to see how the process is going. But on this screen, I also see things like stock number, year, make, model, and some notes about the customer experience like we're delivering on Saturday. But I want to focus for a second on the stage name column. And first of all, going back to how did it get there, because by default, stage doesn't show up on this list. So if you right-click on this dark blue banner, it's going to open up your column options where you can select stage name, and it is going to show up on the right side of your screen. I like to drag it front and center because I like to see it. I want to know what's going on, because it does have a connection to letting me know as a salesperson, as a manager, as an F&I person, where do we stand on these deals, but it also plugs into where I'm going next. And the colors are showing up in relation to these phrases. Now, where do those come from? Let's talk about that for a second. Sales, lists, stages. So go into this menu. Now, mind you, as you're going into some of these screens, as Mark pointed out, these are all permission protected. So if you're going into these menus and you're going, hey, Tierney, I don't see stages, well, it's probably because you don't have permission to see it. So get with your boss, get with your manager, turn that on, or work with them to open up some of these access points.
And I think, just to point out there too, I mean, I think some of those security items are definitely there for a reason. But the other thing too is that as Lightspeed rolls out new features and functionality, typically all those new features are disabled by default. And so it may not be that you were ever restricted from getting access to something, you just never had it. And so, I think being a part of presentations like this, you can kind of see what the system is capable of, and then deciding what you need to have access to.
Absolutely. So make sure they're there if this is useful to you. I think in identifying where we are on the process, it's very useful, but it also plugs into the next element we're going to talk about. Now I would just click new and simply add the details, and I can pick and choose what color do I want to represent here too. And the colors are eye-catching and they help tell the story. But why does it matter? Well, let's talk about the Manager Insights tool, which in this case is listed here under Sales. And back to what Mark said, this is a relatively new feature in the program. You'll want to make sure this is turned on in your security profile if you have permission to do it, because by default it won't be. So we're going to go to Sales Manager Insights, and I'm going to open up this tool. And a couple things. As we look at the top of the screen, we're early in the month. It's the 6th day of the month. We've already sold 34 units. Man, August is gangbusters for us. We're doing well. In terms of revenue, 597,000 in revenue, and our gross profit right now is 143,000. So I can see what's going on right now on the showroom floor. It's real-time information, but I can also see who's got an appointment today, who missed an opportunity because they were busy or called in sick that are overdue. What opportunities do we have this month to follow up with our customers? Text messages, emails, appointments. And what future opportunities are out there so we can be more aggressive with our customers? We can even see leads that have come in over the last 7, 30, or 120 days into the business. And I can also see which salesperson or people are meeting their goals. Are they following up on time? Are they turning their leads into deals? What percentage of those is happening? In addition to seeing those pretty colors, there's my sales pipeline, which identifies where we are in terms of start to middle to finish. Right now, there's 60 deals sitting on my leads, quotes, and deals screen, and I'm noticing a pattern. Looks like folks are kind of getting stuck in this demo and negotiate price stage. Maybe I'm actually going to have to get off my butt and go talk to some of these salespeople and coach them on being better and being more proactive and being more effective. But I also see a little bit of a carrot dangling in front of me, and that's the revenue value per stage sitting right here. And as I move these dollars towards the bottom, that just means more money for the business, more commission in the salespeople's pockets. So we want to move all those numbers to the bottom, and I can use this tool to help guide that in its process.
Hey, Brian, Andrea had a question and just said, do the sales manager's insights only reflect finalized deals?
They do. Yeah. In terms of those units sold, revenue, gross profit, it is finalized deals. Yes.
But when you get down to stages and things like that, that's going to be all of your deals, not just finalized.
Good point. Okay. So yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. If I'm looking at the net results at the top, those are looking at finalized deals, but clearly the pipeline is work in progress. It's what's going on live right now in the sales floor. Once the deal is finalized, it's removed from the pipeline. It's no longer impacting these numbers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great question. So with that, let's talk about where this information came from and how we can be better at moving that pipeline down to the bottom, selling more stuff, making more money. So I'm going to jump into a sales deal, leads, quotes, and deals. And we're going to pop into Mr. Jeff Emick here. We're going to pick on this Maverick sale. And we're going to bounce back and forth between mobile and desk and just kind of emphasize the benefits of the mobile app. Again, free, being more effective and efficient with my time. So as I'm looking at this screen, I'm going to jump right into communications and kind of speak to where some of those analytics came from. And it's directly related to what's going on with follow-up chains. It's directly related to what's going on the communication panel on the right. And it's directly related to what's going on with open and closed follow-ups. And it's directly related to the stage dropdown that we see here. So let's talk about how all those walk together. Now, as I'm looking at communications, we already expressed that in service, when I send out a text or an email, the green box represents that messaging. The blue box is the response from the customer. Now, if we want to automate that using CRM, we can use follow-up chains, and these could be tailored based on where the lead or the deal came from. Your Facebook page versus your website versus a billboard versus a trade show. And once you've built these follow-up chains based on those specific criterias, at that point, Lightspeed starts texting and emailing your customer on your behalf, but it also starts setting up appointment cadences for your salespeople, F&I, and service department based on where you are in terms of stages. Now, I won't go too much detail about how to build these today. There's some references on our website that talk more about that. But as you're going through your sales process, as a salesperson, and why do we use these stages to identify where we are in the process? Well, I'm moving from greet to identify unit to negotiating pricing. Based on those stages, the communication that goes to the customer to keep them abreast on the deal process changes. Because what I say at the greet the guest stage, which is, hi, how are you? What are you looking for? Versus let's negotiate pricing, that's a whole different dialogue. And so therefore the stages change the cadence and the messaging that's going out to the customer. And of course, the responses change in kind. And that is impacting and updating that sales manager insights report that we saw a moment ago. So it's keeping the customer, it's keeping the sales management team abreast of what's going on in real time. And ultimately, if we're staying in touch with our customers, we're keeping them engaged. They're spending more money with us on the showroom floor. Now I'm watching the time, Mark. I know we're getting 5 minutes away here. Are we
Yeah,
doing
Chris,
okay?
yeah, it's pretty tight, so we probably
Okay,
won't have too much rambling here at the end. But Chris had a question for you. He
sure.
said, as a Marine Service advisor, is the mobile app beneficial to me, or is it geared more towards text?
Great question. I think it's beneficial for both. The advisor portion where I can check a customer in, create a repair order, provide an estimate, get a signature, get photos of the vehicles I'm checking it in, and get a deposit. I can do all those things without touching a keyboard. So in my mind, it gets me away from a computer, it gets me out in the showroom floor, gets me out in the parking lot, maybe puts me on site at a campground where the customer is instead of behind a computer. And it gives me still the ability to nurture and build those estimates and repair orders right from a device, from a mobile device. So absolutely, tremendous value.
I, I would just drop in too that if you're not a great typer, utilizing the app, you can use talk to text,
That's right.
which gets to be a big time saver for a lot of people. I did have a question for you though, and I probably should know the answer to this, and I don't. If you're talking desktop, you can have a couple of people who are trying to fight and being on the same repair order. Do you have the the document locking situation? Does that occur with the mobile app as well?
There are some times when it can. Yeah. Yeah. If you're in a document on the mobile app, you will probably get some sort of an alert in various places in the system. Not every one of the places. It's kind of random. But there are some places in the service and sales side where it will prevent you from getting in.
Okay.
Now, those of you that know about dock locks, you know you can free those up. And what's common is somebody left a screen open and they walked away from their computer. But there are some things to consider when it comes to dock locks, for sure. Yeah,
It probably creates more problems than it helps.
maybe. Yep, yep. So a couple of other things, and I'll be quick because I know we're getting close. Back to appointment reminders. When I'm a salesperson and I'm scheduled, call the guy. F&I person gets prepare the paperwork. PDI gets put the battery in the unit. Those appointments that are set by those follow-up chains show up on this calendar where I can manage my workflow, manage my day-to-day, and manage that schedule and make sure that my appointments are being met. Now, with that in mind, there's also a plug for the mobile app here, where using the mobile application, I can manage that calendar of events, and I'm specifically only seeing mine. I'm not seeing my colleagues, and I can manage deals, get e-signatures, stay in touch with my customers. So if I push that follow-ups button, if I've got an appointment, a follow-up, a text message, something to do with a customer, I can see it and manage it right from my phone. gets me away from a computer where I'd probably rather be in the first place. Update notes. My manager knows I'm following up. Their insights tool allows them to see that. And I can also manage back and forth text and email communication from the mobile app, which will then send all of that information back to communications in the relevant places in the system. Now, with that in mind, in addition to that, back to e-signatures and throwing your printers into the fire pit, I can also access deals, create a brand new one from the parking lot or from the showroom floor, in fact. But I also have access to all those forms now, potentially based on permission. So this might be one of those things that you're cautious about. But I could send out a buyer's order, a deposit request, a demo form. Customer then agrees to terms and conditions. They click the sign button, sign it with their finger. They can then download a copy if they're using their device to do that, or I can use my tablet, let them sign it. They get to keep a copy because I send it via text or email to them. And anything they sign when we're out in the parking lot demoing that unit lands on the e-signature tab in the deal. Back to me being able to desk an entire deal practically from a cell phone, but definitely from a desk without printing anything. That's a real thing. That's my digital deal jacket. And yes, those can be printed, but they're also saved to your backup forever. Now, last thing I'm going to speak to, I think we have 1 minute, or what do you think, Mark? Do we have 1 minute, or should we?
I have a consistent history of running long, so we're fine.
Okay. I'm going to show you one more thing, and I think Mark has seen this with me ad nauseum at this point, the customer retention report.
Your new shiny baby?
It's my new shiny baby. I armor-alled the baby this morning, so super shiny today. Anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about that and why it matters. And for those that have seen this before, I apologize for boring you, but for those that haven't, I think you're about to see something pretty cool. So we're going to talk about what it means, what it does, and it also gives you a report card so mama can either congratulate you or mama can either spank you on the hand. And we'll talk about why she's going to do that in a second. And then how do you take action on that data? So everything that we've done today in parts and service and sales comes down to some of the data we're going to look at today. On this report, we're also going to find out how well we did, and we're going to take action to do better. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go to System this time, and we're going to come down to Reports, and this lives in a place in Reports called Customer Retention Report. Now, there's lots of discussion about how we should set up our date ranges. I'm going to keep this one very simple just because of where we are in time. And again, we're in sample data, so not as many transactions happening in here than would happen in a normal store. So I'm going a little bit further back in time than I would probably recommend for an open dealer, but I'm going back to 2017, August 1 of through August 1 of 2021 to define my initial purchase date range. And then I'm going to set my returning purchase date range from where the red bar leaves off. I'm going to go from August 2 of 2021 through current. So what I'm saying to Lightspeed is show me customers that bought from me in this red section, 2017 to 21, and then show me the customers that came back a second, third, or fourth time to buy from me again. Now, I also have the ability to pick a department if I just want to focus on sales customers or service or parts, but in this case, I'm going to focus on everybody. Now, mind you, if I was focusing on sales, I can pick a particular make. Like just show me my Aprilia customers. But again, for us, we're going to look at everybody. I can pick particular customer types like my VIPs, my 20 groups, my employees. But in this case, I'm going to pick everybody. And then I am going to show me the detail because I want to see where they spent their money and maybe why. And I want to sort by customer name because alphabetization is important to me. So we're going to generate the data. And as I look at this information at the very top of the screen, I can see in the red section, 2017 to 21, I had 262 customers buy from me across my business. And of those 262 in the blue section, 56 of them came back a second, third, or fourth time, which gives me a retention ratio number of 21.37. And you might be asking, is that a good number? Am I doing well? Is mama going to be happy? No, mama's going to be mad. You are failing. Now, I looked this up. I've looked up some Google Analytics, and I've looked at some other marketing tools that all agree that you want to be at least 40% or greater. The closer you are to 80%, the better. So 40% is on the low end of good, 80% is on the high end of good. So how do we get so we're not failing and mama's happy with us? Well, first, before we get to that, we can see where those retention customers spent their money, what departments to the tune of how often, and it's clear that Jeff Emig spends a lot of money in the parts department. I know that for a fact. But I can also see who those returning customers are and by department where they spent their money, how often, what kind of money did we make on them in terms of revenue. But if I go down to the bottom, I can also see who those non-returning customers are. Who are the guys or gals that came and bought from me once but never came back? Well, maybe they moved. Maybe they sold their bike. Maybe they dealt with Brian Tierney at the parts counter and he was a jerk. It was a bad day. Didn't have his Red Bulls. But we also see one other thing here, and I think you might have pointed this out once to me, Mark, and I always use this ever since, but we also can see we're not very good about getting phone numbers and email addresses. So how am I going to follow up with those people anyway? So this reveals a couple things, who those non-returners are, and that we need to do better about giving ourselves an opportunity to follow up. Now that I know who those people are, that's great. Tells me the story, but I want to take action on the story, and I'm going to press the marketing button, and I'm going to target my non-returners today. And I click OK. And I can see who all those people are, and it's only going to grab the ones I can send a text message. It's going to ignore those that don't have phone numbers, and I'm going to send them a text campaign and offer them a discount at parts on Saturday, or a free oil change, or free hot dogs, or balloons, or whatever makes sense for me as a business. But I'm going to reach out to those customers, and if we get 10% of those people back, well, going back to my report card and my angry mama, if I can get that 21% up to 40%, and I promise you will, if those customers start coming back and you generate some loyalty, mama's going to be a lot happier with you. We want to try to get that to 80%. So that's a little bit of retention, a little bit of proof in the pudding of what did we learn today? Did we apply it and did it work? I promise you some of those things are going to get that number up anyway, but we can take action and be better. So with that, we went over a lot today. We talked about inventory management. We talked about making sure we're staying in touch with our customers, making them feel like we care about them, just giving them an update. Even if it's bad news is better than no news, I promise. It's going to keep those customers coming back. And if we're maximizing our ability to stay in touch with our customers, we're going to maximize our opportunity to generate money. And we all win. Customer wins, and so do we. And so that's kind of the goal here. But I certainly appreciate the opportunity, Mark. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate your insights and your call outs. I think we all learned a lot today. So really cool stuff.
It's always fun. The last thing or last question that came up from somebody, JB wanted to know, said so much of this came fast and furious. What is the best way to reach out to Lightspeed with follow-up questions about what we learned today?
Absolutely. Well, first, I think we are going to share this video. So if you wanted to watch it again and maybe glean some things that you missed, we're certainly going to show you some ways you can rewatch it. If you do have questions, on the screen now is a tech support number. You can pick up the phone and call support. They can give you some additional insights. If you need a demonstration, we're missing a number on that call number there. That's 800-520-0309. If you call that number, that's going to get you in touch with your Lightspeed account rep. And if you'd like to get with me, ask that account rep to set up a demo, and we can talk more in depth about some of these things together.
And you thought you were going to get away without Diana proofing this presentation?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, don't tell Diana about this. I don't need my hand slapped.
Not again.
Yeah.
I got one more slide to share real quick.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Let me drop that off real quick. So no, we ran a little bit long here, but here's my my standard NPDA slide. So just like to say thanks to everyone who attended today's webinar done in conjunction with Lightspeed. They've been a great partner of the NPDA since day one. Excited to announce that I think I have one more of these left that we'll be doing in partnership with NPA, National Powersports Auction. So working on putting a date together on that, but probably sometime in September. And then I also believe that, Brian, are we doing a Three Amigos webinar next week in partnership with TAG?
Is it next? I think it's the week after next, but we are.
Is it the week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the week after next. In fact, let me look at my calendar just so I don't put my foot in my mouth.
And
Yep.
what are you going to be discussing during that meeting?
Well, the plan right now is to talk about the sales department. So expanding a little bit on what we talked about today. So lead management, opportunity management, some of those insights tools, reporting analytics, and just being better in the sales department. That's going to be the primary focus.
And then we'll be doing another one a month after that. So I'll be taking lead on that one. And I'm going to put together 3 or 4 custom reports for dealers to run for every department in the store, kind of things you should be looking at every week. So that one's coming soon. So just keep an eye out for those notifications online about upcoming training. But as a reminder, the NPDA is here not just to support our member dealers, but also the entire industry. If you're a current member, then thanks for supporting the organization. And if you're not, please consider joining. As you can see on the screen, pretty low cost of entry. And we are working a lot of great stuff for the industry. Our big focus right now is fixing some of these issues with the FTC pricing issues. So hopefully we'll start to see some resolutions to some of those problems relatively soon. With that, I'd like to say thanks to everyone who logged in for this presentation today. I will get the recording turned over to our admin here in a couple of hours. and then hope to have this posted on the NPDA YouTube channel within the next couple of days. So with that, I'll call an end to this, and I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Y'all take care. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Take care.